Welcome to the Needle's Eye Faith and Work Show, a show that aims to help Christian professionals grow in Christ, find your purpose, and transform your workplace. I'm Jeremy Woltz with Needle's Eye, and I'm sitting down with working men and women to find out how their faith impacts their work. Today, I'm joined by Susie Fife, entrepreneur, mother, and basketball aficionado. All right, Susie.
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you so much for being here, and you look really great, and I didn't feel underdressed until you walked in, and now you look significantly cooler than me.
Oh,
like legitimately, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
The moment you walked out of
Any
your
day
car.
I can look cool is a
Well,
win.
and you told me you pulled it off in about 10 minutes. Like,
Story of my life.
yeah, well done. Well
Thanks.
done. Well, I am grateful you're here, and I would love to just kind of hop in and get going because
Sure.
you have a very interesting story, and I want to hear parts of it, and just have a couple of questions that I'm interested to get to.
Okay.
But before we dive into anything, I know you. That doesn't mean anybody watching or listening knows
Yeah.
you. So can you real quick just give me like really brief background? Like where you're from, what were you like as a kid, how did you end up in Richmond, all that kind of stuff. Real quick.
Sure. Okay. So I am the youngest of 6 girls.
Wow.
My dad was a Methodist pastor.
Okay.
He was a businessman turned pastor. And my mother was a nurse. They met very young and grew up in Iowa, small town Iowa, most of my life. My mom had 2 of the 6 girls pass away as babies. So I really grew up in a household of 4 girls.
Yeah.
And I was the youngest and was very athletic, so my dad was always glad with all girls. And at least the last one had some sort of interest, and he really...
Are you the only one out of the 4 siblings? Like
Yes.
you're the only one that
Yes.
truly took interest?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Was that your dad's influence? Like did he push that on you?
No, but he saw that little interest and he was like, oh,
He
here we
exploited
go.
it. He was like,
He's like,
"We're going in."
yes, we're going all in.
Okay.
So, yeah. But he had me playing basketball from a young age. I played volleyball as well, but I was also very into art. So art was sort of my God-given gift from a very young age. Got that a lot from my mom. I was kind of your not too girly girl, tomboy, but really liked a lot of things. So living in a small town was great for me because I got to do everything. So everything from theater to art to sports, music. I sang, I played the French horn. I did a lot of stuff. I like to stay busy. But yeah, so when I got to high school, I knew I wanted a career in art.
In high school you knew this?
Oh, I knew it from a young age, actually, that I wanted to do something. And at that point, computers, probably junior high, high school, computers were becoming a thing. And you probably don't remember, but paint was a thing where, it's the first paint, like...
I'm not that young.
Okay, well, like bitmap, like, these little...
I remember getting the first computer and having dial-up and the suitcase
all that.
phones.
Yeah, all that. But yeah, I remember sitting down at the computer and with my mouse just creating art with pixels, and I was kind of technically savvy, and I knew I wanted to go into some form of graphic design or art that leveraged the computer. And so when I was looking for schools, I was looking for somewhere I could play basketball and go to a good art school. And because I was from a small town, I didn't have the level of play that some of the bigger city girls did in Iowa. So my parents hired a recruiter to send my videos that I made by myself on VHS. Is that VHS? Yeah. To various schools across the country, and VCU was one of them that looked at my tapes, and it came down to between VCU and Savannah College of Art and Design.
Oh wow, okay.
And I ended up choosing VCU because it was the highest level of competitive ball with D1 that I had an opportunity and a scholarship. Yeah, SCAD
not
was
quite as big.
Yeah, level D3. So
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how I ended up at VCU. And
Interesting.
when I came to visit here was the first time I'd gotten on a plane and the first time I saw the ocean. So
did you
fell in love.
I mean, clearly you did your college career here.
Yeah.
Did you go back to Iowa, or were you just like, that's it, Richmond's home?
Yeah, no, I met my husband in the gym and really through sports made a lot of connections, and I knew that I loved Richmond when I came. Hour and a half from the beach, hour and a half from the mountains, and an hour and a half from DC.
Yeah.
So much more culture, especially as an artist. I feel like I I love my Iowa roots. I love having grown up there, but it was kind of like I always felt out of place. Like it wasn't necessarily for who kind of all those other parts of me always a little bit felt out of place. So, yeah.
So you were PK, right? Yeah. How was that like coming to, and maybe the VCU reputation was different, but like VCU is an artsy school, and it's not really known for its religious kind of overtones or undertones, and so being a PK from Iowa, traveling and pastor's kids suddenly living in the big city of Richmond.
It's a little naive.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what was that like? What was that transition?
It was exciting for me because I was a college kid and I wanted to, I was always a risk taker. I never was really afraid of a whole lot, but I grew up in a home where my dad encouraged us to accept all kinds of people, and he was very authentic and kind of himself when he was out. So I think that really taught me a lot about taking time to learn people, learn and understand them. And he was just an outgoing, personable person. So even though he was a pastor, I think actually moving away helped me quite a bit.
Okay.
Because it helped me just find God for myself, not in relation to my dad, who everybody knows, you know. So first couple years, being a part of a team was a huge help. So it's already part of a family, getting to know God for myself, finding a campus ministry to get involved in. But it wasn't until about my junior year where basketball was just so tough. I wasn't playing. It wasn't what I expected. I felt like I was disappointing my dad and the people that, brought me here to play. And I said, well, if I can't be a leader on the court, I'm going to be a leader spiritually. And that's really what helped me to start a Bible study for my basketball team. And
that's cool.
A couple of teammates got saved. And it really just changed a part in me of really identifying where God had me. It's not always what I thought it was going to be. It looked a little bit different. But it really helped define me in kind of growing up a little bit and seeing how God could use me.
Yeah.
Even little awkward, not little, tall, awkward Susie, he could use. So, yeah.
Not to put it on blast, I'm just shy of 6 feet.
Yeah.
And you are noticeably taller than I am.
Yeah.
So little is not what I would use to describe.
No. But what that tells you is that even in my mind, I can see myself as little Susie.
That is true. Yeah.
And so while I might outwardly be 6'2" and look like, I can have a business and I can have a family, and there's still those thoughts of little Susie, the youngest, the artist, the out of place girl who, just always have had to deal with those thoughts.
Yeah.
Even at being tall doesn't mean that I think tall all the time.
Well, and so you're tall, you are athletic, you played collegiate level sports, like all those are actually really great sort of things that can give you a boost of confidence, they can give you a sense of identity or self-security. At the same time, I think I've met enough creatives, who live in that sphere, and they kind of always feel like they themselves feel like they are odd ducks, right? Like it always seems like they have the sense that, well, I don't quite fit. So how have you navigated that? Because obviously at this point, I would say from the outside, you seem very self-assured, very confident in who you are and who God has helped you to become. Do you still wrestle with that now? Do you still have that little Susie doesn't quite fit mentality?
Before we started this conversation, we were talking about, getting older kind of sucks in a lot of ways. But there's also some benefits, and I have enough history now where I've seen that my weaknesses are really strengths, and how much it can help people when I'm just transparent and real with my insecurities and with my weaknesses. And then I find out that I'm not alone in those things. So this mentality of, this sort of starving artist mentality, like, oh, Susie, you'll never be successful. You can go to art school, but, you might want to try this or that. Or just always knowing that this was a very God-given gift. It's not like I had to work really hard at being creative. So just learning to trust in who he made me to be, and that even my height and being different helped me stand apart and gave me connections that I wouldn't have had otherwise.
Yeah.
I wasn't great at basketball, but I was coordinated enough and tall, and I could sink a hook shot pretty well. And that was about enough, just enough to get me a scholarship to come out here, and not enough to keep me off the bench at VCU, but that's okay. It was enough to provide an opportunity to be in a place where I could grow my family, I could grow in relationship to God, I could grow in a business, you know. So just, I think, enough life now where I've seen how God has used the areas I was most insecure about to do his thing. And many times it looked different than what I expected, but just learning to trust that process.
Yeah.
So there are certainly some areas now in life that I am insecure in.
Sure.
Because of the challenges I might face right now, but I have enough history to see how that process ends up working out for his glory.
Right.
And it's not about me.
Yeah.
So, kind of getting that focus off myself.
Yeah, absolutely. So clearly we're not going to sit the whole thing in your college career. We got other things, but I do have one more question.
Yeah.
So you talked about how, like, okay, if I can't be a leader on the court, I'll be a leader
off
spiritually, right? Off the court spiritually. Can maybe if you can even think back this far and like get back into your motivation.
Yeah.
Was that a decision you made really because you were like, okay, God has me here for a purpose. He's got a thing. Was it you saying, I know I'm supposed to lead somehow, and like, in order for me to feel like I'm not failing, this is what I have to do? Like, you know, what really kind of, if you can, put yourself back into your motivation for that.
It was really about purpose.
Okay.
Like, you know, why the heck am I out here if I can't do something? Or it was almost like, okay, I can make a choice. I can get depressed and feel worthless.
Yeah.
Or I can feel like I'm doing something with what I have, and it was more about purpose for me.
Okay. Yeah.
And I remember thinking I can either, like, it was really like, okay, I'm feeling like not good, and it was a choice of, and thankfully being in a place where I had enough support around me to help make that choice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's cool. Okay, that's helpful. Okay, so you said from a young age, you always knew like graphic design, and clearly that's turned into RedOrange Studio.
Yeah.
Didn't start there, but you didn't even start directly in like a creative industry, right?
No, I started in a finance industry because it was the only job I could get out of college with a art degree.
Yeah. How?
Okay,
How does that make
this
sense?
is a cool story. I had no place to live right out of college, didn't want to go back to Iowa and live with my parents. So through contacts and friends in college, I stayed with this couple for a couple months until I could find a job. And I was doing some freelance design work for a finance company and Equity Concepts. And they asked me to come in full time. And I'm like, okay, I interviewed for all these. I wanted to work for VeggieTales, doing 3D modeling. I did a lot of 3D work in college. And I was like, well, it's the only job I have. So let me go work for a finance company doing their marketing. And it was just the right job for me.
Really?
And they took me under their wing and taught me everything I needed to know about running a business.
That's awesome.
2 years later, my freelance had grown enough to be about part-time worth of work. So they let me go part-time at jobs, my jobs, so that I could build my freelance business. And then a year later, I remember going, okay, I think I'm ready to, start a business. And I was like, again, that kind of small Susie mentality. I'm like, why would I be able to do this? I'm just an artist. Like, why do I want to have a business? And I had recalled a memory that I hadn't thought of I hadn't recalled this memory until that moment in my early 20s when I had thought about starting a business. And that was when I was probably about 12 or 13. I drew a bunch of pictures, went to my dad's church, used his copy machine, made copies, and sold coloring books door to door in my neighborhood.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so it was God kind of reminding me of, that, I had this desire to use my creative gift to make money. So that's kind of what I needed to make the plunge. And then Equity Concepts came on as a retainer client for about 10 years thereafter.
That's amazing.
They are both the owners, are mentors of mine to this day. I can call them anytime.
Yeah.
So it was really, while not exactly what I had pictured right out of college, I wanted to work for an agency like I own now. It was just the right job for me to set me up for success.
Yeah, that's really cool. And it's so funny to me. Richmond is such a tight-knit community. And for being like it's not a massive city, but for being a decent sized city, the like Christian circles are so small.
Yeah.
We hosted an event last week, and Equity Concepts was like the speaker. You know, was the like primary person to be up there to come see. And I never knew you even had a connection with them.
Yeah, been
Small
20 years
world.
now, but yep.
That's awesome. Okay, but even then, it was still marketing. So it wasn't like, well, you know, I dabbled in finance and tried to be a financial advisor or something, and then you always knew.
It was the design and marketing for them.
Yeah.
But,
Okay.
But I got to learn all of the financial components that I needed to know to run a successful business.
Yeah, that's huge.
And found that I liked it. So.
Okay. Yeah, because you're not like, again, this is all stereotypical, so I apologize to any creatives out there.
That's all
but
right.
like there's the stereotype that creatives are like, you know, there's just a mess on the wall and there's papers tacked up everywhere, and you know, it's just nothing's on time and the deadlines are a thing of the past. And
Yeah.
none of that describes you. Like you are certainly regimented and scheduled.
But again,
and
you know how God orchestrated it from the beginning of being, a lot of times people also don't think that you can be athletic and artistic. They think that those are very polarized, but they're not. You know, the rhythm and the balance that you have to learn as an athlete are the same types of rhythm, balance you have to learn in composing artwork, you know. So there's so many things that parallel, but also discipline. And, you know, you've got games you've got to learn things by. And so I think a lot of being an athlete helped me to be a better creative, but also be a business owner that understands the importance of, if you're going to use your creativity, using it for a function and a purpose to help others. So helping a business, you can't help somebody with your creative if you're not, you know, serving the objectives of the project and the timeline and the budget. So I did have a unique set of skills that set me up for success as a business owner that some people don't think a lot of creatives have.
Right.
And they may not, but I think kind of that set of experiences really helped me.
Yeah.
And the people around me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Having a good tribe of people. So you have, from my take from being on the outside, it looks like you have a really intentional approach with RedOrange and the way that you've shaped it and formed it and run it. And you know, some of that's got value on transparency and value on grace. A lot of it has a value in kind of like a generosity of, you know, I think you described it as like every business can be a catalyst for good. Is that something that formed over time, or did you go in knowing, hey, I'm gonna actually build this place with all of that in mind?
I mirrored what Equity Concepts did.
Okay.
So what I mean, I think I'm probably more intentional in my relationships and not in who I'm not is I'm not a super consistent person. Like I'm not one of those people that gets up early in the morning and does this and like super routine. I am very much a creative, fluid, flexible, bohemian kind of personality. Like, oh, what am I feeling today? But I am very loyal and intentional in my relationships to learn, understand, and take what I've learned to, you know, I take what I learn and I apply it. I can do that well. And Equity Concepts was like, here, whatever you learn, you take.
Yeah.
And a lot of that I took within my company, but also just, I think the ministry part of me, knowing that I had a purpose and that I wanted to glorify God in what I did, and then knowing it didn't have to look like church or it. And honestly, I'm more comfortable in business settings than I am a lot of times in church settings.
Okay.
Like I sat on church leadership for 18 years. That was harder for me than going in and leading business meetings. So leaning into not necessarily what's most comfortable, because obviously God calls us to uncomfortable situations.
Right.
But leaning into my giftings.
Right.
And where are my strengths? And if I can relate to creative people very well, I can't always relate to very churchy people.
Right.
So sometimes I can, but I just have chosen to really lean into my unique gifts and talents, and then really surround myself with people who have strengths in the areas that I don't.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Well, so what you're describing to me comes across as a process of really coming to understand your own identity.
Yeah.
Like, who is it that God created Susie Fife to be? And that means, overcoming insecurities and recognizing some of what you deemed weaknesses are actually successes in God's economy.
Yeah.
Understanding these are unique or inherent skills and talents and interests that I have. And if I lean into those, it's probably because God gave them to me for a reason.
Right.
Like, it sounds like you've gone through a process. Was that something that, did you face many years, even starting out with a business, where you were like, I am insecure and
Oh my
I'm
gosh,
not
yeah.
built for this, and this is going to crumble and fail? And
Yeah. I mean, I think, as I correlate it to my 4 years of college basketball, the first two, me trying to be a leader on the court felt awkward. It felt like I stumbled nothing I could do worked.
Yeah.
Even though I knew I could play the sport, but nothing worked. When I started having Bible studies and teammates were getting saved, I understood. It's like I leaned into that, and there's this level of purpose and like fluidity, like things just started to happen. And the first part of my business, it was like that. I was awkward, and you've got to kind of go in and pretend. I was in the theater too, so it's like I was I'm trying to improv. It was like improv was the name of my game in the first part of my business. Like, I didn't know what I was talking about, but I think I knew, but I was just going to do my best, with what I had. And then so yeah, I think that there was definitely that time, and still are pockets of time, but I'm just a little bit different in how I approach it. I'm much more like verbal about not knowing something. I'm okay with not knowing something and verbalizing it versus feeling like I have to pretend to know it.
Yeah.
I'm okay with saying I don't know, that I'm learning, that I'm really curious about something. It's just a little bit more of a embracing the process of learning and becoming versus having to feel like I've got it all together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. And so even with that, because I've known you for a couple of years now, and I've been able to kind of see RedOrange from the outside. But one thing I've heard you talk about is with your team, which obviously has grown over the years. It hasn't always been as big as it is now, but you model transparency and grace with your team. And that is like a bedrock for how you lead.
Yeah. And I
So-
wasn't as good at it before COVID.
Okay.
Got a lot better through COVID. That authentic leader kind of mentality.
Okay. So what does it look like, and how did it change?
I think what I saw leadership as 3 or 4 years ago was people are looking to me. I need to set the example. There's a lot of truth in that.
Yeah.
But when rubber meets the road and you're going through crap and you try to be like, there was this mantra I heard in church leadership, lead while you bleed. And I don't like that statement so much anymore, because yes, you have to lead while you're hurting, but I think I kind of put this, okay, I've got to glorify God. I've been called. People are watching me. I need to be a good influence. Now, parenting, there's a huge component of that. Your kids are watching you. But I have seen, as my kids have seen me grieve over the loss of my sister and my dad, we'd had this shared experience of grieving through various things in the last several years as a society, that when I just, am a little bit more authentic in that, my team, I could see the value it brought to my team.
Yeah.
And I could see the value it brought to the ministry God had given me.
Yeah.
And so I don't think I could ever go back. And it helped me become a healthier person.
Yeah, that's huge.
Versus this, oh my gosh, people are watching me. I'm a good influence. I've got to like have this all together.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a healthy place to continue to lean into. I had to just, So
Did it feel like a risk when you made that shift?
I think because of COVID, I didn't have much of a choice.
Okay.
There was it was less risk
Yeah.
because other things were risky. Other things were issues at that point.
A lot of things were up in the air.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Yeah, okay. That's cool. So really, I'm always so impressed whenever I kind of look at how RedOrange runs and the way that it functions, and obviously you're a huge part of that. I know, back to this idea that like you firmly believe every business can be a catalyst for good. I know that you say, well, I just borrowed from Equity Concepts, and that's awesome. I mean, good for Equity Concepts. I know many of the people there, they are phenomenal, and I don't in any way want to diminish or take away from that.
No, absolutely.
But you are also not Equity Concepts. You are still something different.
Oh, yeah, and that's been years ago. That was the foundation to that thinking. You know, I have seen so many companies who are paying attention to corporate social responsibility at a corporate and healthcare level, to social impact, and you know, whether it's being a B Corp and thinking about sustainability, thinking about being green, thinking about pairing with nonprofits. And I just really felt convicted that as a Christian business owner, shouldn't I be, you know, I should be doing that a lot more than I should be talking about, I don't know, like having a conduct of belief, or what do you call those? Like a statement of faith.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's the word.
Medal is like a code of ethics?
Yeah, that probably was
Statement
somewhere in there. There was some phrase I just made up. It's a new coined phrase. I just made up. But anyway, yes, like a statement of faith, or like putting God in my mission, all that is fine for some companies. But for me, I want to do good. And I really do feel like the business place is ministry. And you know, I think of Jesus and being a carpenter and what he did. Like, did he really preach while he was a carpenter? I mean, he got called to ministry, you know, in his 30s, and he started teaching and preaching, but he was a carpenter before that.
Yeah.
And
no less the Son of God.
No, and he was a creative, and he worked with his hands. He produced something out of nothing. But I can just think about the good that he did and what he created to help people of all religious groups and all ethnicities. And, you know, I just, that's just a passion of mine, is really to use the gifts God's given me. I happen to be a creative, but whether it's hiring somebody who's a copywriter, or hiring an account manager, or working with vendors and partners in their industry, when you do the very best you can and you care about the people, and then you use your assets, your resources to do good in the community, it glorifies God, and it gives him a good name. Yeah. And there's a lot of things that don't give him a good name. Yeah. And so I just want to be on the other side of that.
That makes sense. So, important distinction. So you are a Christian business owner because you're a Christian who owns a business. Is RedOrange technically a Christian business, or is it a business that happens to be run by Christians?
I don't think a business can say the sinner's prayer.
That's a valid point.
I mean, a business doesn't decide to commit to God. This is a soul decision. Right. It's my soul. So do we operate under principles that are biblical? Yeah. I mean, you look at our core values, they're very biblical. So are a lot of businesses that aren't run by Christians, right? So does that mean that sometimes there are moral decisions I have to make as a business owner, conflicts of interest? Yes, that's a part of living in this world. Yeah. It's not just business. That's having conversations with my kids about school and classmates, and you know, that's everywhere. My team knows I'm a Christian.
And they're not all Christians, right?
No.
Yeah. Okay.
No. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you don't hire solely Christians to be on your team, and okay.
But we will gravitate a lot of believers to the team. In fact, my business owner is a believer, and you know, that was a really neat orchestration that God did when I had my third baby. We ended up merging companies. And that I think is something that would be key. I can't personally imagine having a business partner that doesn't share the same values, especially faith-based values, biblical values that I have. But I don't know, though. I mean, we're also very different people, but God has used those differences to really help do the best work we can do.
And I'm sure even though you're both believers, you don't agree on everything.
No.
Right? So sharing the same faith doesn't mean, okay, great, no conflict, we agree on everything.
No. Yeah. No. And I mean, I really think it comes down, my dad used to always say, just use your talent to the greatest of your ability. Yeah. And he'd harp on me on that, especially on the basketball court. Look, you know, like when sometimes I just didn't like all that. I didn't want, because he just really encouraged me to just do the very best you can do. And I really feel like that in the business world, you know, and that's a big core value of ours is you just do it to the very best of your ability. Give your best all the time. And I think it can make a great impact in the community when you give your best.
Yeah. So back to this idea of catalyst for good and everything you've been talking about, which has been wonderful already to listen to. Can you give me an example of how Red Orange has intentionally said, we're going to be a catalyst for good, we're going to do something, or we're going to make certain decisions, or we're going to follow policies, or whatever? Can you share a couple examples?
Sure. One example would be as I grew from being able to serve smaller nonprofits and small businesses, I could no longer offer services to them because I just the company outpriced them. But I really felt like, well, they're the companies, they're the people that help me get to where I'm at. I don't want to not invest in them. So we started what we call the PIP program or the PIP project 5 years ago. And PIP is a small orange seed. So it's the idea of planting seeds where we can. And so for the first year, we did an application process. We had about 25 nonprofits apply to receive pro bono work. And we were able to, I think the first one we did like a brand identity design for a small nonprofit. Well, we got so many applications in that my dear friend and my employee at the time that was running that said, gosh, I want to help all these people. So we ended up, I just called some agency friends and we got a few other agencies involved, including Journey 7, which is a great partner of ours. To be a part of providing pro bono work for some of these other nonprofits that applied that we couldn't help everybody. So anyway, 5 years now, and we've got several agency partners. We've given over $250,000 worth of work to nonprofits, and then usually in the winter in the winter we provide a logo design to a startup. So this year we'll be awarding the winner of EO, which is Entrepreneurs Organization. They've got a student competition. And so whoever wins that will be receiving a free identity design by Red Orange.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I also really like what you just said. It's an identity design, which is right. Which kind of but even that terminology, I think that's really fascinating terminology, and it makes me wonder when you look at the greater work of Red Orange Studio, what do you think really is like the work of Red Orange?
Oh, but the heartbeat of Red Orange is to help people, period.
Okay.
I mean, the identity I would hope is to mirror what my creator has done in creating the world, by creating things, by making things that we're not into being, whether it's a brand identity or a website or a creative marketing strategy or a piece of collateral, that it wasn't there before, now it is, and it helps that business to increase revenue. But also my real heartbeat is training employees and watching them grow in their career. So giving creatives a place to learn the importance of deadlines, file organization, working with teammates, collaboration, so that they can then thrive in a career as a creative. I absolutely love watching my employees kind of go on and become directors of programs, and I like having young designers come in as interns and then connecting them with their future opportunities. That is my heartbeat. Yeah.
That's really cool. So one of the things that I will always remember, an interaction that you and I had. So when I first started at Needles Eye, we hosted an event. It was an HR event. And so we had these HR lawyers come in and basically kind of talk about, well, here are the changing laws in HR, how it affects business owners. And I remember, I kind of walked in thinking this is going to be such a great event. They're going to tell us what's necessary, and then we can talk about, and here's what we can do above and beyond. And I was a little surprised because the event didn't necessarily take the turn I thought it would. It was a little bit more of, okay, so how do I protect myself? And I remember distinctly one of the business owners in the room kind of was like, well, look, I am a Christian who owns a business, wasn't a Christian business like we talked about, but he was a Christian who owns a business. And basically their question was, how do I really only hire the people I want to hire, right? I don't want to necessarily work with people who are living certain lifestyles. Can I do that? And I remember when that question was posed, you leaned over and you just whispered something along the lines of, what a missed opportunity. Right? And that has always stuck with me because one, I'm with you. I think, man, that really does feel like it could be such a wasted opportunity to be in a relationship. But can you speak a little bit more into, why do you think it's so important to have a diverse team, whether that's belief systems or backgrounds or lifestyles or whatever else?
Yeah. Well, first of all, as a creative agency, if I'm offering creative solutions, I want perspectives, right? So I want everybody's perspective brought to the table. The work becomes better when varied perspectives. Plus, I'm working for industries and companies who their audience is diverse. So how am I going to offer a solution for somebody's audience that's diverse if I'm not diverse? So that would be like my industry answer to that. Okay. But from like a heart perspective and from like I know I have a desire for people to see Jesus. Yeah. If I have all Christian employees, they don't need to see Jesus. Like, why am I even here? I can help them grow in their faith, but I'm like, that's probably part of why church leadership for me, I'm kind of like, well, y'all are Christians.
Right, yeah.
Like, what if I'm the only Christian business owner that this employee ever encounters? What if I'm the only normal, not I can be a normal person that they can talk to. I can care about the things that they care about that are important to them and not just box in the things that are important to me and say that that's all that should be important. I want them to see that a Christian can be a leader, they can be a creative, and they can also be authentic and relatable, down to earth, loving, kind, empathetic. There's just, sometimes I don't know if there's enough of that. Yeah. And not to diss the church. I love the church. Sure. But that is where I know my love for Needle's Eye is that there are a lot of missed opportunities in the church, and who needs a business that runs just like a church, like that, then just be a church. Right. Now I'm a business. I'm in the world. I'm doing work. What am I going to know? What's next? Ask only Christian clients? Like only Christian vendors? What does that really do to help the kingdom of God grow? Right. Yeah. So yeah, it was even though I totally get where that question could come from, and I'm not dissing that, it's just for my heart and my calling, that's just not where my heart is. Yeah.
Well, and one of the ways that Needle's Eye started 47 years ago at this point was the idea that, non-Christians in the workplace, they're not going to church. Yeah. The church isn't necessarily going to reach them, but you know where they go. They go to work.
They gotta go to work.
That's where we can rub shoulders. That's where these interactions, these relationships can happen. Yeah. And to your point, and if we take that away, and if suddenly we say, no, this workplace is only for Christians, that is truly what a missed opportunity. Yeah. And to your point, it's not proselytizing. It's not constantly, hey, today, even though we're not a Christian organization, we're going to have a Christian seminar. And it's just living out ethics and modeling characteristics and treating people with dignity and worth, period. Yeah. And I feel like you model that very well. I mean, from the outside looking in, truly, I had never worked for you, but from my limited interactions, I feel like that is something that just sort of naturally comes out of who you are. Yeah. And I'm grateful. And I wonder if in your work at RedOrange, and you think about, okay, what we do, this is how we reflect the goodness of God. I mean, is that, naively, not being an artist, we can look at it and be like, well, because they hide little Christian messages in their art, or they put a little cross in a cloud up in, where is it that you actually see yourself, the work that you do, truly reflecting the glory of God or the goodness of God?
In the way that we treat clients, in the way that we are transparent about our pricing. I mean, these are very business right things, decisions and ways of operating, but we're not hiding anything. We are not trying to grow our bottom line at the expense of not paying our employees their value. we're not, we are committed to giving a percentage of our revenue back to the community that enabled Red Orange to grow anyway.
Yeah.
Like, I think just doing the very best work we can with no excuses, caring about the details that our clients are caring about, right? Sometimes we pray to God about the stupidest things, like a parking spot, but he does care.
Yeah.
So if I don't care about, and it's not always easy, in the marketing world where, each client has their preferences, and that is one thing and my team knows. We're not going to gossip. We're not going to sit and talk about a client, and yes, there's a place for venting
Sure.
and sharing concerns, but each one of us has called each other out on it before, because it's just not for me, it's not how I represent Christ, but it's also not how you love people well, and it's not being honest and transparent.
Well, thank you. We'll kind of bring it to a close. I want to get one last question for you.
Sure.
Through everything you've described, you've got family, you've built this wonderful business, you've had obviously a long and intentional faith journey. Mm-hmm. At this point in your life, where would you say you're actually finding joy?
Oh, that's a great question. I just bought a vintage camper.
Okay. like literally, like you go out into the woods and you sleep inside this tiny little thing.
And I bring my kids, and it's my glamping spot, and I make it cute, and and it allows me the freedom to just go if I need to. So my vintage camper and my kids bring me joy.
Yeah, that's a good answer. That's awesome. Well, Susie, thank you. Really, this has been awesome.
Yeah,
I have always appreciated the time that we get, but I really
Yeah.
wanted more time, so this was
Great.
really selfish on my part. So thank you.
Thank you,
for coming
Jeremy.
and talking.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you for all that Needle's Eye does.
Yeah,
Appreciate
I do
you
all
guys.
of it. So.
Yeah, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Needle's Eye is wonderful. Thank you so much, really.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
Great job.
Thanks for tuning in to the Needle's Eye Faith and Work Show. Please share, like, and subscribe if you enjoyed this episode and want to see more. Needle's Eye is a faith and work community based in Richmond, Virginia. We are a non-profit organization that seeks to help working people grow in Christ, find purpose, and transform the marketplace. Check out Needle's Eye online at www.needleseye.org. Here, you can find more content, check out upcoming in-person events, and learn more about partnering with us financially.